serious, what is the most creepiest or seemingly supernatural thing that ever happened to you? Ran away from a month-long canoeing camp, walked 20 miles without water and hallucinated Native American chanting and drums beating, wolves howling too. I was 12. A local man from an indigenous tribe came to talk to me when I was found and asked if I heard anything, as it was an area of land that was sacred to his people. Of course no one actually believes me when I tell this story. Had a wall turn orange on 2 occasions over 10 years apart. I mean a solid orange without any glow or anything in darkness. That was weird. I had a shoe fly across a room hitting a window. Wasn't the only one there that witnessed that. When I was a kid I'd occasionally hear the sound of someone calling my name very softly. Thought I was just imagining it until I was in the living room and my mom goes, "I think someone's calling for you." We were the only ones home at the time. My boyfriend's great-grandpa had just died and his 6-year-old mini schnauzer was up for grabs. We wanted to keep him in the family but no one was willing to take him. So my boyfriend and I took him as our own. One day, after about a week of owning him, we were leaving to go to the dog park. As we are walking out of the bedroom door, I heard my boyfriend whistles to alert the dog to come, and he did. He heard the whistle and followed close behind, thinking it was us. Neither of us whistled. My boyfriend looked at me and said, "Did you whistle?" "I didn't think you could whistle." I said, "I can't whistle, I thought it was you." Turns out, his great-grandpa used to whistle at his dog like that. It was definitely him, no doubt. Really weird experience, honestly. Was babysitting my little cousins. All were under the age of 5. I was 13. I put them to bed and went downstairs to watch a movie. The way their house was set up, the living room couch faced the stairs, so I would have seen if one of the kiddos had come downstairs. I had to walk through the kitchen in order to let their dog out. Everything was fine. Went back to the living room. Like 10 minutes later, dog wandered back in. I walked into the kitchen and every single cabinet in their kitchen had the door wide open. My cousin, the kid's mother, had warned me their house was haunted, but I didn't take her seriously. Just thankful the ghosts just wanted to mess with me instead of harm. About 15 years ago, me and my friends used to have a homemade gym in a garage outside of residential areas. We were just a bunch of teens drinking, smoking, exercising and playing games every day there. One evening 4 of us finished the card game, left the cards stacked on a big pile, about 3 decks, and went to meet a friend at his house, about 15 minutes of a walk. We locked the doors behind us, big friggin' industrial steel doors with a huge bolt and padlock that would break your foot if you dropped it. We were the only ones with a key. We also blew out the candles we used as light source, as there was no electricity in there. We came back an hour or 2 later and were about to start another card game, but one of the lads noticed the cards pile was gone. One of the fellas screamed as he noticed he's standing right in the middle of ring made out of cards, with king and queen of hearts at his feet. We ran out screaming and our first instinct was to find someone older. We came back with a friend in his 20s, he was extremely drunk, yelled, "Satan, come here, don't scare the kids, face me." Nothing happened. We stayed away from the place for months, but nothing like that happened ever again. I don't believe in ghosts, gods or mean spirits, but this still seriously bothers me. There was literally no access to the place outside of the key I've personally had in my pocket. I have two, neither are that convincing but quite interesting. When I was younger, I was on the landing going towards my parents' bedroom. It was the weekend, so my dad was home. I could see through the gap between the door and the frame where the hinges are and thought I could clearly see my father folding clothes and putting them in his chest of drawers. I jump in to try and scare him and the room is empty. I immediately sprint out of that room. This was a lot more recently. My cat was put down due to liver failure. I was at university at the time and didn't get to see him one last time before he was put down, despite planning to come home only the next day. The phone call breaking the news ended with my mom and I was in bed crying. Suddenly, the box of color catcher strips on top of my wardrobe falls into my desk below. It's been untouched up there for a while. It's not like I'd put it back up there just beforehand. It's probably a coincidence, but it's really nice to think that Treacle might have wanted to say hi one last time. In 2011 my grandmother had cancer. She didn't want anyone other than her kids to see her when she was dying. She didn't want that to be our last memory of her. My mom flew down to Florida with her siblings to take care of her in her final days. My mom would call me and joke about the things she said while she was high on morphine, my favorite being "Where's a little bird when you need one?" On March 11, 2011 at 11:08. I walked outside to smoke a cigarette. I was playing on my phone for a bit before noticing it was 11:10. and I'd get to make a wish in 1 minute. I look on the table and notice a cardinal sitting inches from me. If you live near where these birds do, you know they aren't a social species. I started at him, and even when flicking my cigarette it didn't fly away, no matter how close I was. I looked at my phone and caught the exact second that the time flipped to 11:11, and as it did the bird flew away. I shrugged it off as weird, and made my wish. I wish for my grandmother to not be in pain. My mom called a few minutes after and said my grandmother was dead. Her time of death was 11:10. It was more comforting than creepy, but it's amazing that it happened. I got a cardinal tattooed on me after, and ever since when someone I love dies, I see cardinals. Living at my grandparents' place after they passed away, they had a giant window in the living room that was always shut and locked. One day I saw the curtains lifting up 2-3 feet in a flowy kind of way. I walked over and touched it and it stopped. When I turned around to walk back to my desk I felt a cold, but comforting hand, touch my shoulder. Also had a chair with one of those pump things beneath it. It would ping every time you sat down or got up. Heard it ping one time when I was asleep on the couch late at night. Then saw what looked like a person wearing a hat. Grandpa always wore hats, walked down the hallway towards the bedrooms. Other friends who stayed over in my grandpa's room would notice their lamp getting turned off or things falling off tables/shelves. My grandpa was always a jokester/prankster though. I have two, both not me. The first was when I was with my mother one night caring for a friend's horses while they were out of town. I was inside and my mom went outside to dump a bucket or something quick out one end of the barn that has a light above the door. When she came back she told me she had seen a little boy standing a few yards away in the grass. When she turned around again he was gone. No idea why he was there or what it was, but it freaked me out too. The other was from an uncle who was a truck driver. He lives out in really rural country and was coming home from a run the one night. He had heard stories in the truckey community about what they called the black dog. It's a large black dog with bloodshot eyes that will appear on the side of the road. Well, the one night he was coming home really late and he happened to glance off to the side of the road and he saw something, and as it passed through his headlights he caught a glimpse of this large black dog. Supposedly it only appears for those who are soon to die. My uncle is alive and well even now. Me and my little sister shared a dream. In the dream we were on an outdoor trip with our gym/chess club teacher Mr. Michi. We would all climb up this big giant grassy cliff and jump off the edge. We would hit the bottom, climb back up, and jump again. After a while Mr. Michi jumped, but he never came back up. We woke up after that. She was talking about this dream the next morning when I realized we both had the exact same dream. The next time we were at school during morning announcements we had a moment of silence for Mr. Michi. He had died from a head injury playing basketball with another teacher the Friday before. Apparently he had fallen backwards and his head bounced or something, causing him to die. It's not the first or last time I've had premonitions about life/death, but it was the first that I had shared with a sibling and the most shocking. He was pretty young and in good health before this. I used to have this dream all the time about this one road next to some train tracks. It was a very specific area with very specific houses around, blackberry bushes, etc. Anyways, when I was 13 my family went to Melbourne, AUS, and as we were driving down a seemingly random street my dad stopped the car and said he wanted to go for a walk down a random alley. He said he used to live around here growing up. We walked through the alley and when we come out, it's the road. The road with the train tracks, the green fence at that one house, the berry bushes, the whole shebang. It was exactly the same as the place I'd seen in my dreams for years. I'd never been to Melbourne before ever in my life, and my dad had lived there when he was like 6 or 7, yet somehow I knew this random road that my dad used to walk down to get to school. Definitely a strange day that I'll never forget. I always find creepy and haunted places wherever I go. I look for a flat to rent, I end up renting exactly the one that's haunted. I take a walk around parks in a city I've never been to, I always find a tree that's broken in half or otherwise cursed or haunted. Some birds make a nest next to my house, or to the place where I live. They are always some extremely rare species that's somehow connected to my culture. I hope it's enough to say that some Icelandic ravens followed me to rural Spain. What is even more weird, I always tend to be treated friendly by the spirits haunting the places. I don't find them as cursed, but more like life-saving or helpful in moments of doubt. About 3 years ago my city was hit by what was, for us, a major snowfall and ground to a halt. The preschool I worked at closed, unpaid, thanks capitalism, but I was making bank off of babysitting for parents who were still going to work. They were from Chicago. They laughed at us, So I was spending all day for a week and a half in a 100-plus-year-old home, alone with a baby and 2 dogs. Baby cried unless he was being held, so I would usually strap him on me with the carrier, put on a podcast, and putz around. The house always gave me vibes and I absolutely hated putting the baby down in his crib, thus turning my back on his creepy long thin attic closet that never quite stayed closed and made you feel watched, but other than feelings and random creaks, old house, nothing actually happened. Until one morning when I was heading down to the finished basement to refill the dog food container. Baby was strapped on as usual. I wasn't rushing or in socks, the basement didn't freak me out like the upstairs did, TBH, and I felt a hand push me in the small of my back. I fell/skidded down the stairs on my back and landed on my butt, sore and terrified I had almost squished the baby. Baby was fine, but screaming his head off. I booked it upstairs and the baby napped in the living room with me for the rest of the week. I sat for them once or twice more, hated the feeling in that house, also, they had no good snacks, and gave the job to my friend. She has a horrifying story involving baby's eventual little brother and a door shaking from inside an empty room, but that's for another day. The last few years that I lived at my parents' house there were a few things that happened that I couldn't explain. I remember one night I was watching a movie in my bed and I heard a kind of scrapping sound. I looked over and my cat was in the bed next to me. I paused the movie thinking maybe it was the DVD player but no, I kept hearing it. Looked over into the bathroom and my straightener was moving side to side on its own. No one else had touched it. I was home alone. My DVD player would turn on by itself sometimes. I couldn't keep anything on the bathroom vanity or I would wake up to it being knocked across the bathroom and hitting the wall, again. No one and no cats would be there. I would hear loud footsteps in the hallway upstairs. The cats would randomly freak out for no reason and stare up at the stairs, sometimes for an hour. I would see this blue orb flying around my room. My boyfriend saw it too once, and I hadn't even mentioned it to him that I had been seeing it. Sometimes, I swear I would wake up to what sounded like someone yelling my name, and my room was always cold, even in the summertime.